Hare Krishna. So I say we will have very few people today, maybe because of the weather. So we were to start from verse 2.55, if I'm not wrong. I just get the verse.
I think people just join a little late.
Okay.
You might be the Brahmana who's smack on time.
Yeah. Excuse me. So I'll share my screen, Mataji. Okay, so let's recite this verse. You can repeat after me. Shri Bhagwan Uvacha
Hey Bhagavan Vacha
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Sarvan Partha Manogatan
Sarvan Partha Manogatan
Atmanyaivatmana Tushtaha
Atmane Atmana Tushtaha
Tata Pragyastadochyate.
Sita Prajnasya Tadochyate.
Shri Bhagwan Uvacha
Hey Bhagavan Vacha
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Sarvan Partha Manogatan
Sarvan Partha Manogatan
Atmanyaivatmana Tushtaha
Atmane Atmana Tushtaha
Tata Pragyastadochyate.
Sita Prajnasya Tadochyate.
Shri Bhagwan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Sarvan Partha Manogatan
Sarvan Partha Manogatan
Atmanyaivatmana Tushtaha
Atmanyaivatmana Tushtaha
Sita Pragyastadochyate.
Sita Prajnasya Tadochyate.
Anyone else would like to recite?
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri
Shri
Bhagwan
Bhagavan
Uvacha
Vacha
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Kaman
Sarvan Partha Manogatan
Sarvan
Sarvan
Partha
Partha
Manogatan
Manogatan
Atmanyevatmana Tushtaha
Atmanyaivatmana Tushtaha
Tushtaha
Tita Prajnasta Dochyate.
Sita
Sita Prajnasya
Pragyastadochyate.
Tadochyate.
Yes.
Prajahati Yada Kaman. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagwan
Bhagavan
Uvacha
Vacha
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Prajahati Yada
Yada
Kaman
Kaman
Sarvan Partha Managatan
Sarvan Partha
Sarvan Partha
Manogatan
Manogatan
Atmanna Vanchana Tushta
Atmanyaivatmana
Atmane
Tushtaha
Tushtaha
Sita Prakasha Ubhashate.
Sita
Sita Prajnasta
Pragyastadochyate.
Dochyate. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagwan Uvacha
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Prajahati Yada
Prajahati Yada
Kaman
Kaman
Sarvan Partha Manogatan
Sarvan Partha
Manogatan
Manogatan
Atmane Evatmana Tushtaha
Atmanyaivatmana Tushtaha
Tushtaha
Sita Prajna Stadachate.
Sita
Sita
Pragyastadochyate.
Pragyastadochyate.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri
Shri
Bhagwan
Bhagavan
Uvacha
Vacha
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Prajahati Yada
Prajahati Yada
Kaman
Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan
Sarvan Partha
Sarvan
Sarvan
Partha
Partha
Manogatan
Manogatan Atmanyevatmana Tushtaha
Atmanyaivatmana
Atmana
Tushtaha
Tushtaha Sita Prajnasya Tadochyate.
Sita
Sita
Pragyastadochyate.
Pragyastadochyate.
Anyone else? Okay, let's recite the synonyms. Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan
Shri
Vacha.
Bhagavan Vacha
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said.
The
Supreme
Supreme Personality of
Personality
Godhead
of
said.
Godhead said.
Prajahati
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 gives up.
gives up
Yada
Yada
when,
when,
kaman,
kaman,
desires for sense gratification,
desires for sense gratification,
sarvan,
sarvan,
Sarvan.
of all varieties,
of all varieties,
partha,
Partha.
Artha,
O son of Pritha,
O son of
Son of
Pritha,
Pritha.
manahagatan,
Managatan,
of mental concoction,
of mental concoction,
atmani,
Atmani,
in the pure state of the soul,
in the pure state of the soul,
eva,
Eva,
certainly,
certainly,
Certainly.
atmana,
Atmana,
Atmana.
by the purified mind,
by the
By the
purified mind,
purified mind.
tushtaha,
Tushtaha,
Tushtaha.
satisfied,
satisfied,
Satisfied.
sthita pragya,
Stita
Stita
Prajna,
Pragya.
transcendently situated,
transcendently situated,
tada,
Tada,
Tada.
at that time,
at
At
that
that
time,
time.
uchyate,
Uchyate,
is said.
is
Is
said.
said.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desires for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. Purport. The Bhagavatam affirms that any person who is fully in Krishna consciousness or devotional service of the Lord has all the good qualities of the great sages, whereas a person who is not so transcendently situated has no good qualifications because he is sure to be taking refuge in his own mental concoctions. Consequently, it is rightly said herein that one has to give up all kinds of sense desire manufactured by mental concoction. Artificially, such sense desires cannot be stopped. But if one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then automatically sense desires subside without extraneous efforts. Therefore, one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation. For this devotional service will instantly help one onto the platform of transcendental consciousness in himself by realizing himself as the external servitor of the Supreme Lord. Such a transcendentally situated person has no sense desires resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desh Tarine. I like this word, petty materialism. That's very striking. Okay, I'll read the translation one more time. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So here we see that actually Krishna is responding to a question that was asked by Arjuna. And that question actually is a very peculiar question. His question was, if you remember, what are the symptoms of a person who is consciousness is fixed in transcendence? How does he speak? How does he walk? How does he sit? So those kind of questions Arjuna is asking. And one might think, what kind of question is this? Krishna himself had said that we are not the body, we are the soul. And now Krishna is asking, because what walks is the body, what sits is the body, what speaks is the body actually. So why is Arjuna asking this? So if we understand this in proper context, just before this, there is a section that ended where Krishna was talking about transcendence, basically not transcendence, but attaining transcendence through samadhi. So he had basically talked about when your mind is no longer disturbed by flowery language of the Vedas and when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, those kind of things Krishna had mentioned. And the verse before that was when your intelligence has passed of the dense forest of delusion, we shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. This might sound a little out of context because here Krishna and Arjuna are standing in a battlefield, And Krishna is talking about attaining samadhi and what happens when you are not attached to the flowery languages of the Vedas. Now, what Arjuna is doing here is he's trying to contextualize this all everything that Krishna had said so far. He's trying to contextualize it in the sense that he is trying to apply that knowledge in the context of the discussion that is. So the real discussion was, Arjuna's question to Krishna was, should I fight the war or should I not fight the war? What should I do actually? And here Krishna is talking about the Vedas and the transcendence and samadhi and so many things. So now Arjuna is trying to understand, okay, this person who is fixed in samadhi, who has attained transcendence, what would he actually do? Would he really fight? So his real question is, he wants to understand, such a person, will he really fight the war or he will not fight the war? That's what he wants to understand. But he phrases the question very nicely. So he says, what are the symptoms? So actually, if we see, Arjuna asked 4 questions to Krishna. So the 2.54 was Sthitapragya's ka bhasha. So first of all, Arjuna had invented a term here, not invented, but basically Krishna did not use Sthita Pragya. He had used the word samadhi earlier. So Arjuna had introduced this new technical term, Sthita Pragya. So if you understand the technical meaning of this word, Sthita Pragya, Sthita means fixed. And Pragya again is a Sanskrit word and it's a multivalent word. There are multiple meanings of this word. The commonly used meaning for Pragya is wisdom or knowledge that is beyond all mundane logic and mundane knowledge. So basically it talks about transcendental wisdom or transcendental knowledge. But Pragya also means transcendence. So that wisdom, that knowledge will only attain when a person has attained transcendence, right? Otherwise, how will a person attain such a knowledge? So Pragya here refers to one who is fixed in transcendence. So then Arjuna asks, Ka bhasha. Now bhasha means language. How does, so, and Prabhupada translates this as symptoms. If you, in the word to word meaning, he does use the word language, but in the full translation, he translates this as what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in in transcendence. So now we have to understand that bhasha here refers to what exactly is bhasha. So bhasha is definitely language, but for what purpose is language used? So the technical definition of bhasha is bhashyate iti bhasha. So sometimes even a commentary is described as bhashya. So Govinda Bhashya is the commentary that is written by Baldev Vidyabhushan. And what does it describe? Bhashya, bhashyate iti bhashya. One which describes is a bhasha. So Govinda Bhashya, for example, describes, it elaborates the Brahma Sutras, the Vedanta Sutras. Similarly, here, when it is used, what is the Bhashya? So here Arjuna is asking, what are the characteristics? What are the symptoms? What is it that can be used to describe such a person? So that is what he's trying to understand from Krishna. And then he says, Kim Prabhashet. So Kim Prabhashet is the second question that Arjuna asks. So then how does he speak? So now here, it actually is a little rhetorical usage of the language. So Acharya explained that it's not that, he wants to understand, how does he modulate his voice or how eloquently does he speak. The question actually here is, how does he respond to the ups and downs in the lives, So what is his response? It could be either a verbal response or it could be a behavioral response. So how does he respond, And then the third question that Arjuna asks is, Kim Asit? How does he sit? So now again, this might sound a little rhetorical, but sit means when we sit, we are a little composed, right? We are sitting in one place, and that's when we see that kids, they cannot sit at one place for a long time, because they're not so composed. But adults, they can sit at one place for a long time. So sit here refers to how does he control his senses. And in response to this question, actually, Krishna talks about a tortoise. A tortoise, completely withdraws his senses inside the shell. So actually, that verse comes in response to this particular question that Arjuna is asking here. And Kim Vrajet, how does he move? How does he walk? That actually refers to, again, it's a rhetorical usage. it refers to how does he engage in the material world, how does he act in the material world. So that is actually, so 4 questions Arjuna is asking. What are the symptoms? How does he speak in a sense that what is his response to the material ups and downs in the life? Then how does he control his senses, and how does he engage his senses in the material world? So now Krishna is going to answer these questions one by one. So first he answers the first question, bhasha, what are the symptoms? So in 2.55, Krishna talks about the symptoms. Now symptoms could be internal and external, and Krishna is going to talk about both internal and external symptoms. Then Kim Prabhashet, how does he speak? Krishna is going to answer in verses 56 and 57. Then after that came Asit, how does he control his senses? That is going to come, the answer to that will come in 58 to 63 verses. And Kim Vrajet, how does he engage his senses? That answer Krishna will give from verses 64 towards the end of the chapter, last verse, which is 72nd verse. Actually, this, how does he engage in the material world, that will continue throughout the Bhagavad Gita. Now we'll see how it does. But in context to this question, Krishna kinds of concludes the answer in by the verse 72. And that is where, when Arjuna hears the word Shanti, Shanti, Shanti so many times, in response to this question, that is what confuses Arjuna. And that is where right in the beginning of the 3rd chapter, Arjuna asked this question, that why are you asking me to fight? If such a person doesn't do this, so it's a very strong word that Arjuna uses, and we'll discuss it when we come there, the first verse of 3rd chapter. But this is what actually confuses Arjuna. And that is where it gives rise to that question. So coming back to this verse 2.55, again, I'll read the translation one more time. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in the pure transcendental consciousness. So Prajahati Yada Kaman. So Prajahati is, Hati means to give up. Prajahati means to completely give up. And what do we have to give up? Yada Kaman may refer in a sexual connotation, or it may refer to, in general, it may refer to all material desires. So here it is the generic reference, Kaman refers to all material desires, and that will be that is actually confirmed by the next word that Krishna uses, Sarvan, all. So Prajahati and Sarvan, both are very strong words. So completely gives up, and all material desires actually. Now one may ask, can we really give up all desires? Is it possible? This is a question for everyone. Can we give up all desires?
No.
So how do we understand this? Krishna is saying to give up all desires. Is Krishna asking to do something impractical?
I think he's trying to say to redirect your desires.
Okay, yeah, that's very close. Anyone
Or
else
give
wanna-
up material desires.
Yeah, but is it possible to give up all material desires?
If you direct it to spiritual desires, yes, that's what Prabhupada says.
Right. Okay, so actually here Manogatan, born out of, Mano means mind, Gatan basically saying born out of mental concoction. That's what Srila Prabhupada translates this as, mental concoction. So desires, material desires are, they arise in the mind. The mind is the center of all activity. So all the, in the 15th chapter, Krishna describes that all the senses are grouped about by the mind. In the Uddhav Gita, in the Avanti Brahman section, it is mentioned the godlike power of the mind. So mind is very powerful. It is almost like God for the material. Whatever mind thinks, whatever the mind decides, that is what actually we do. So all the desires born out of mind, that is what Krishna is asking us to give up. And actually beyond the mind is the soul, and the soul has its own pure desires, and those desires are not to be given up. Actually, those desires are actually, they have to be channelized, they have to be harmonized. So this philosophy of giving up all desires, that is actually a Buddhist philosophy. We know that Buddha had said that what is famous words that he uses? Asha hi paramam dukkham, nirasha hi paramam sukham. So asha means hope. Hope of what actually? Hope of material sense gratification, hope of material happiness. That he says is paramam dukkham. It is the supreme misery. And nirasha is a very negative word, but Buddha says that it is actually the supreme happiness. Nirasha hi paramam sukham. So that is actually like a Buddhist philosophy, and we know that Buddhist, and we had discussed it, I think, a couple of times, that the Buddhist philosophy is very peculiar in a sense that for example, so their idea is that this the reincarnation is there, but what actually reincarnates? If the soul doesn't exist, so what is it that reincarnates? So they describe it as more like a candle is burning. What happens is when the candle is, it is like wax, and the wax is going down and down and down. It comes to a point where it is going to, phase out. The flame is going to phase out. So they say that actually, but what happens is just before the flame goes away, another candle is brought about, and this flame is taken from this candle to that candle. So basically, the flame transfers from one candle to another candle. So their philosophy is that, based on our karma and based on our desire, this flame is going to get transferred to another candle, and this existence in the material world will continue. So their idea is that the best thing is to give up all desires. When you give up the material desires, all desires basically, then this flame will extinguish. It will not go to the next candle. That is their idea. Now, in this same analogy is used in Srimad Bhagavatam also, in the Uddhav Gita section, but there it is used in a different sense. There Krishna describes the nature of the material world like a flame of a candle. So there he says that actually the flame is burning, but it is constantly changing. The flame is not constant. It appears to be constant, but it is constantly changing. So he says that actually that is the nature of material world. It appears to be existing permanently, but it is constantly changing. It's not the same. That is actually a characteristic of matter. When Krishna compares matter and spirit in the second chapter itself, he says that the spirit never changes. It remains the same, but matter is completely changing, and changing in a sense that matter always deteriorate. It does never happens that matter by itself it transforms into something beautiful. Rather, if something beautiful is born, as the time progresses, we see that anything that is material, it deteriorates, and then ultimately it dies, or it loses all its luster. So that is actually a characteristic of matter. So this philosophy of there are other things also in the Buddhist philosophy. For example, there was this person who comes to Lord Buddha. So one of his very prominent disciple of Buddha was Ananda. You might have heard about him. So he has actually written a lot of things about Buddha. So the teachings of Buddha were documented much after Buddha had departed. So it's not that right time everything that Buddha had said was documented. So much of what Buddha had taught, much of what Buddha has said, it was documented like a significant time after Buddha had departed. So this Ananda describes that once a person had come to Buddha, and then he asked, are you God? He asked, before even that, in the context of what we are discussing, he asked him that, is there a soul? And how is it different from the body? Is it same as the body? So Buddha didn't say anything. He just kept quiet. Is it different from the body? So again, Buddha remained quiet. He didn't say anything. So he asked many questions about the soul, and Buddha was completely silent. He didn't answer anything. He didn't say anything at all. And then this person became frustrated and he left. So after when this person left, this Ananda, he asked Buddha, so why didn't you answer him? So Buddha said that actually this person doesn't have the adhikar. He is not qualified to get the answer, because whatever, at the level of his knowledge, whatever I would have said, it would have confused him. So now it's not that after the person had left, Buddha had given an answer to Ananda. He even didn't give the answer to Ananda. So the idea is, the Acharya explained that you actually cannot understand soul until you accept scriptures. And what Buddha had done was he had already rejected all the scriptures. Now, if he had used scriptures to define what is soul, then he would have gone against his own philosophy. So he had said that reject all Vedas. So without actually accepting, we see that the material science, it is not able to explain that how does this consciousness originate. They may say that, okay, no, it is just some kind of chemical composition, and Prabhupada challenges them. So why don't you make it? You are so advanced. Why don't you make this, mix some chemicals and produce consciousness? So they cannot understand consciousness, they cannot understand soul, they cannot describe it because they don't accept scriptures. So without accepting scripture, it is almost impossible to give anything about soul, actually. So another time, another person had come to Buddha, and he had asked Buddha that, are you God? So Buddha didn't say anything. Then he said, okay, are you a celestial being? Are you an angel? Like that, he had asked 4 or 5 questions. Who are you? What are you actually? And then this person was becoming increasingly frustrated, and Buddha said, I'm awake. And then he walked away. So actually, the Buddhist philosophy is, I won't say that it is vague. It is definitely vague to a certain level, but it is basically Lord Buddha. So we know that Buddhism is it's like a transitional religion. So the purpose of Lord Buddha was to give some basic level of goodness to people so that they can transition to something higher. The society had degraded a lot at that time when Lord Buddha had appeared, and he wanted to elevate those people. So they were misusing the scriptures. So he took away the scriptures from them first, and then he gave them a little moral goodness platform. From there, they can rise above. That is what Buddha had done. So this idea that all the desires can be given up, it is actually not practical. The desires are always there. Even if, say, if we don't have any foundation in spirituality, and for by somehow or the other, if you are able to give up all the material desires, then we may ask, what do I live for? What is the purpose of my life? At least the materialist, they want to live because they want to enjoy more and more and more. They want to enjoy sense gratification. The materialist philosophy is that the person who dies with the most toys, he is the most successful person. So if you take away that desire also to acquire material things, then what do I live for? There was this person here in US, I believe it was either in Florida or in California. I read this in one of the articles that came in either New York Times or somewhere. So this person was trying to commit suicide. He was on a bridge about to jump down, and someone had, just before that, he had climbed the bridge railing. So there was some person who saw this person is acting a little weird. So he had called 911, and at that time, these people had come to see what exactly is happening over there. So when he had climbed by the time he had climbed, or he was trying to climb, these people had come. We know that they come in very fast. So the police and the ambulance and everything came over there, and the fire brigade. So now this person immediately, when he saw all these cars and vehicles have come, he immediately climbed the railing, and then he was about to jump. So there was a responder, the fire responder. He came and he said, just wait, please at least talk to us. Tell us exactly what has happened. Why are you doing this? Maybe we will be able to help you out. Please tell us. So this basically, there was, in short, the conversation was given. So basically he was trying to understand what is the reason, why are you trying to commit suicide? So he said, I have lived my life for so long, and I am already 60 years old, and I don't have anything to live for now. I've done everything in my life. I'm satisfied with whatever I've done, but I don't see why I should continue to live. So actually this is true. If we don't have a purpose to live for, what is the reason I should continue to live? There is also this atheist, who had written a very famous book. I'm missing the name of the book, but actually the way he concludes in that book is, so the real question to ask is, should we commit suicide today or should we commit it tomorrow? So that is the real question. When should we commit suicide? Because what happens is materialism, it fries us out, and even if it fries us out, if we take away even that material sense gratification, then we may ask, what is the purpose of my life? So now, so what Krishna is saying is, Atmanya evatmana tushtaha. Now this word tushta had come elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita. It's a very positive and very famous verse of Bhagavad Gita. Does anyone remember where does this verse comes? This comes later in the later chapters of the Gita. Anyone?
What is the question, Prabhu?
The word tushta. Tushta means satisfied. So Krishna is saying Atmanya evatmana tushtaha. The soul should be, satisfied within itself. Tushtaha. Where has this word come elsewhere in the Gita? This word has come elsewhere in the Gita. What is that verse?
Tushyanti is there. It is same tushta.
Yes.
Okay. The Tushyanti cha ramanti cha.
Yeah. Which verse is that, Prabhu?
10.10.
10.9 actually. Madchitta
8,
madgatah
9.
prana bodhayantah
10.9,
parasparam kathayantasya mam nityam tushyanti charamanti cha.
Yeah.
So tushyanti means satisfied. So, and satisfaction itself is a positive thing. Satisfaction, Krishna says towards, I think, 13th or 14th chapter, that satisfaction is the austerity of mind, So satisfaction is an austerity. And here Krishna is saying that, the soul is satisfied within itself. So how could it be enjoyable if it is an austerity? But in the 10.9 verse, it is the Chaturshloki section of the Gita, one of the most famous sections of the Gita. It starts with 10.8 is, Machitta, sorry, it starts with,
Aham sarvasya prabhu.
Aham Thank you, Mataji. Aham sarvasya prabha mattaha sarvam pravartati iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samannita. Basically, he describes that it describes devotee, it describes the position of Krishna. Aham sarvasya prabhava mattaha sarvam pravartate. So everything comes from me, everything is maintained by me. Those who understand this, they're wise, they're Buddha, and they worship me wholeheartedly with all their emotions. And in the next verse, he says, Mad chitta mad gatah prana. Their consciousness is always fixed in me, and their lives are dedicated to me. And then they are always conversing about me, and they are not just satisfied. Tushyanti charamanti cha. They are actually relishing it. They are so happy. They're relishing it. So one thing is to be satisfied. Okay, I am satisfied. It's okay. I'll be satisfied. But the other thing is we are actually relishing it. So that relish will come. So here Krishna has not introduced bhakti so far. There is a progression in the Bhagavad Gita. So Arjuna's framework, if you look at the first chapter and the beginning of the second chapter, Arjuna's framework is of the body. He's looking at everything from a bodily platform. So Krishna, basically takes his consciousness, his focus from the bodily platform. He first talks about soul. You're not the body or the soul. From there, if you see, and because you're the body or the soul, you should act, you should not be attached, act in a way that you're not attached. And then he talks about Brahman, then he talks about Paramatma, and then he talks about Bhagavan finally, So that is the progression that comes. But so far here, Krishna has not introduced bhakti. Later, in the same chapter, Krishna is going to drop a hint about bhakti. So in the second chapter, Krishna talks about Jnana Yoga to a certain extent. He talks about Nishkam Karma Yoga. And then he gives a hint about bhakti in the second chapter. This is what Prabhupada himself writes in the purport of the last verse of this chapter. 2.72, if you read the purport, Prabhupada says that in this particular chapter, Krishna has talked about Jnana Yoga, he has talked about Nishkam Karma Yoga, and then he has given a glimpse, just to Arjuna. So Atmane evatmana tushtaha sthita pragyas tada uchyate. So the soul is fixed in itself, and that is how it is satisfied. Now, this basically sounds a little like, understanding that, we understand that the Jnanis, they only accept the soul. We all are Brahman. Just because we are in Maya, we are not able to realize that we are Brahman. When we get out of Maya, then we will realize that we are Brahman, and then we'll go and merge into Brahman. And that is where, we'll be happy. Now, one may ask, what exactly is the happiness of a Jnani? Can anyone answer that? if you don't accept Bhagwan, if you don't accept Paramatma, just at the level of a Jnani, where you only accept the soul and you only accept Brahman. Even if they attain Brahman, and they do attain Brahman, Krishna himself said in the 18th chapter that they do attain Brahman. But what exactly is the happiness that the Jnanis attain by getting fixed in Brahman? Can anyone answer that?
Prabhu, they just come from negative to zero. I think there is no happiness there. There is no ananda. That's what I understand.
So what do you mean by negative to zero? Can you explain that a little bit, Mataji?
Like if there are some material problems or some anything related to their material life, that they leave everything and then they just focus on the yogic postures and the jnana. That's what I understand, Prabhu. You have any? I mean, happiness. I don't think so. They have spiritual bliss in the Brahman.
Right. So you are right to a certain extent. So basically, kind of happiness that they get is that their material miseries end. Even to get away from material miseries, that itself is a kind of happiness. We are in so much material distress right now. Now, for example, if a person have had a fracture, in the leg, and it's a pretty bad fracture, and he's suffering pretty bad, and it just continues for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. There is a surgery that needs to be done, and still he's suffering. After some time, 1 year, 2 years down the line, he gets cured, and then he's out of plaster and he's able to return back to his normal life. That itself is some kind of happiness. It's a relief. You had this problem in your leg which was bothering you, it was hurting you pretty bad, and it was basically not letting you do your normal activities, your day-to-day life activities. But if you somehow or the other, if that get resolved, that itself gives some kind of relief. So that happiness at the Jnani level, it is just a relief from the material existence. We see in the 13th chapter, Krishna says that the progress in Jnana Yoga is based on Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam. Darshanam means realization. The realizations of the miseries, the evil involved in Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. So basically, they understand that this is misery and they want to get away from this misery. So that is their happiness. And we understand that at the level of Paramatma or Bhagwan realization. Paramatma realization is described in the 6th chapter. We'll talk about it if we have time. But Bhagwan realization, we see that the happiness is more in terms of, having a personal relationship with not just Bhagwan, but also with Bhagwan's, personal associates. So we ourselves become a personal associate of the Supreme Lord, and then we have so much association available with us. And in association of the other devotees, we serve the Supreme Lord. That is the idea. So that is a different level of happiness. Actually, it's not just a relief. It is happiness in the true sense. So we see that where is that? So there is this discussion that happens between Ramananda Rai and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and there this question is asked by Ramananda Rai: what is the most miserable situation? Anyone remembers what was the answer given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? What is the biggest misery? What is the biggest misery for a devotee?
To forget the Lord.
Yeah, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't answer that. Yes, separation from the devotees. That is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says. So getting away from the devotees, separation from the devotees is the biggest misery for a devotee. Now, interestingly, the same question is asked in the Uddhav Gita section of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Uddhava asks Krishna, what is misery? He asks the definition of misery. And Krishna at that time doesn't say that, getting away from the association of devotees is the biggest misery. He says, Dukkham Kama Sukha Apeksha. He says, Dukkha is Kama Sukha Apeksha. The pursuit of happiness is actually Dukkha. The the expectation of getting some happiness at the level of material existence, that actually is dukkha. So we may say the pursuit of happiness. It's a good movie also. I don't know if someone has watched it. I did watch it a long time. I don't remember anything about it. But there is a movie, Pursuit of Happiness. So we all are actually in a pursuit of happiness. And everything that we do in our life, everything that we do throughout the day, we do it with an expectation of getting some kind of happiness out of it. So we are always in a pursuit of the happiness. So at that time, Krishna tells to Uddhava that the expectation to get some kind of sukha, that is dukkha, that is actually misery. And it is true. I remember when I first, my second job when I got, and my first job was not very good. It was terrible actually. The second job was good. At least I found it good. And there we were in an office setting, and there used to be at least on my floor, there used to be at least 100, 150 people who used to sit, and we all used to work. It was like a desk job. I was into software. So every day at 3:30 p.m., like office peon used to come and he used to bring tea. And that tea was very, I used to have tea at that time. It was in 2005, if I'm not wrong, or 2006. And he used to bring tea every day, and that tea used to be amazing. And sometimes there were few days where he for whatever reasons he would not come. And when he would not come, whenever the clock will strike 3:30, everyone, if the tea is not on the desk, everybody will become very agitated. What happened? Why did this guy didn't come? Everybody will get up from, almost everybody will get up from the desk, and they'll start looking here and there. Where is this person? Why didn't he get the tea for us so far? And everybody used to be agitated. That little happiness that people used to get by drinking tea, that actually, if you don't get that, that used to agitate people so much that they will stop working. And I remember at that time there were few people that they don't drink tea, they don't drink coffee naturally. Not that they are in some kind of spiritual consciousness, they just naturally, they don't like tea or coffee. And they used to be calm, quiet, working without any disturbance. They don't care what others are doing. They just basically are focused on their work. So what is actually misery? Misery is dukkham kama sukha apeksha. It is the expectation of getting some kind of happiness. So, excuse me. So here Krishna is talking about that, become free from any kind of material expectation, any kind of expectation of material happiness. Be situated in the self. Prabhupada says that, what is the definition of a spiritualist? Prabhupada says that one who is satisfied internally, one who looks for happiness internally, he is a spiritualist. And one who looks for happiness externally, he is a materialist. So that is the essential difference between a spiritualist and a materialist. And that is what Krishna is saying, that try to find peace, try to find satisfaction internally. Don't look for anything external. And later Krishna is going to talk about a tortoise, and we'll see when we come to that verse. I actually want to cover the next verse also, but let's see if there are any questions, and then if we have time, we can go to the next verse. So I just stop here, take a pause, and see if there are any questions, comments, corrections about what I have said today.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
So, Prabhuji, a question on the example that you mentioned about person whose leg is fractured, that example. So my question is, absence of distress does not necessarily mean the presence of happiness.
Exactly.
Then how do we understand this example?
Yep. Right. That's what Mataji was saying, from coming from negative to zero, right? That is what I was trying to explain. Actually, happiness, I remember I have had a very bad experience, bad accident once, and I had one broken hand and one broken leg. My right hand and left leg, or left hand and right leg, it was like a diagonal. And I met with an accident while riding a bike, and at that time I did not realize how bad it will be, and I was laughing and all that. But when I went to hospital, that time I realized that I have actually fractured one of my hand, fractured my knee also together. And I was in to my native place at my home from my hostel. The engineering boys hostel is so much fun, so much happening place. And for at least 3 months, I couldn't stay in the hostel. I was at my home, with my parents, and I was bedridden almost. Even if I had to go to restroom, and someone would have to carry me, and at that time there were not so many, stretchers and all those things available. We were in a relatively remote place at that time. So, but when I got cured, it took a long time for me to, at least my knee, it took a lot of time for it to get cured. But when it got cured, I was so happy, and not that I was getting something really good. It's just, it was some kind of relief for me, just so that, I can get along with my normal life. I can ride my bike again. I can again go to, wherever I want to go. So it is a kind of a relief. So it's not exactly happiness, as you rightly said. It is a relief from, our state of being diseased. So when we say material existence is a disease, when you are free from that disease, that itself gives some kind of satisfaction, some kind of relief. So we confuse that relief with happiness. Actually, that is not happiness. So you are right about that. Madhukanta Prabhu, did I answer your question?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Any other questions, comments, corrections? Okay, all right. Prabhu, do we have a quiz today?
No, Prabhu, I didn't prepare.
All right, that's fine. So I can start with the next verse then. I'll share my screen. Okay, so this is 2.56. You can repeat after me. So just recite it once. Dukheshvanudvignamana
Dikdamana,
Sukheshu Vigataspраha
Shukeshu Vigataspраha,
Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha
Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha
Sitadhirmunirujyate.
Munirujyate.
Translation: one who is not disturbed in mind even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and is free from attachment, fear and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. Purport: the word Muni means one who can agitate his mind in various ways for mental speculation without coming to a factual conclusion. It is said that every Muni has a different angle of vision, and unless a Muni differs from other Munis, he cannot be called a Muni in the strict sense of term. Nasha Rishir Yasya Matam Na Bhinnam, Mahabharat 1 Parva 3 and 13.117. But a Sthitadhir Muni, as mentioned herein by the Lord, is different from an ordinary Muni. The Sthitadhir Muni is always in Krishna consciousness, for he has exhausted all his business of creative speculation. He is called Prashanta Nihishesha Manorathantara, Stotra Ratna 43, or one who has surpassed the stage of mental speculations and has come to the conclusion that Lord Sri Krishna or Vasudeva is everything. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. He is called a Muni fixed in mind. Such a fully Krishna conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of the threefold miseries, for he accepts all miseries as the mercy of the Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to his past misdeeds, and he sees that his miseries, by the grace of the Lord, are minimized to the lowest. Similarly, when he is happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of the happiness. He realizes that it is due only to the Lord's grace that he is in such a comfortable condition and able to render better service to the Lord. And for the service of the Lord, he is always daring and active, and is not influenced by attachment or aversion. Attachment means accepting things for one's own sense gratification, and detachment is the absence of such sensual attachment. But one fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor detachment, because his life is dedicated in the service of the Lord. Consequently, he is not at all angry even when his attempts are unsuccessful. success or no success. A Krishna conscious person is always steady in his determination. Beautiful purport Prabhupada gives. So here, anudvigna manaha, his mind is always fixed. So I'll read the translation first one more time. One who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. So Sthita Dhi Muni, Dhi means mind, Sthita means fixed, and Muni is, as Prabhupada defines the word Muni, it's a very excellent definition. Actually, Prabhupada's purports are very enlightening here. Even in the 54th verse, Prabhupada writes an excellent purport. He says that every person has some kind of symptoms. A rich man has some symptoms, a poor man has some symptoms. A person who is so he says similarly, a person who is fixed in transcendence, he also has some symptoms. So that's how he's he basically describes over there. It's very true actually. So here he defines the word Muni. So Muni is basically a person who has a different kind of stand from another Muni. So until he has a different viewpoint, he cannot be called a Muni. So that is actually Muni, and we see that there are 6 types of philosophies that exist in the Vedic tradition itself. We have 6 philosophies. I'm not going to go into the details. We basically follow Vedanta, which is given by Vedvyas himself, who is none other than Lord Narayan. Vedvyas, sometimes even I had that misconception that Vedvyas, and I might have said that previously in some of the classes. I remember I did say that. I used to think that Vedvyas is an empowered incarnation, but actually that is not true. It is true, but it is not true for our Manvantara. In this particular Manvantara, in this particular this Mahayuga, Rupa Goswami writes in Laghu Bhagavatamrit that because Krishna himself is coming, even Vedvyas is actually Narayan himself. So Narayan himself comes down as Vedvyas. In other Mahayugas, it is not Lord Narayan who comes as Vedvyas. Vedvyas in other Mahayugas, he is an empowered incarnation. But in this particular Mahayuga, it is Lord Narayan himself who comes. And he has given Vedanta, and we follow Vedanta. So whatever we are reading here, Bhagavad Gita and everything, is all part of Vedanta philosophy. So every Muni, so these different philosophies were, the different Munis had given different philosophy. Like Patanjali is given by Patanjali. Patanjali Yoga Sutras are given by Patanjali Muni. So like that, every philosophy that exists, it is given by different Munis. So Sankhya, as we know, is given by Lord Kapila. He is also called as a Muni. So every Muni gives a different kind of interpretation. Every Muni gives a different kind of, he has a different stand on the philosophy and the ultimate conclusion of what is the ultimate reality. But here Prabhupada says that, actually, according to Krishna, Sthitadhi Muni is a Muni who doesn't speculate. His mind is fixed. Fixed in what? Fixed in transit. The 3-4 miseries. Now, interestingly, Dukheshva Anubhigna Manaha. So even amongst miseries, he is Anudvigna Manaha. His mind is not disturbed. So that means that even for a Muni, such miseries exist. So the Muni, we may say, they are so advanced. They are, in certain cases, they are devotees, and even for them, there are miseries that exist. And even Sukheshva Vigataspraha, even Sukha also exists. So Sukha and Dukha, it is like a nature of the material. It's like, so material world is full of dualities. And what are the dualities? Sukha and Dukha are the dualities. So they exist. Krishna also says, Matra Sparshas Tukantya Sitoshna Sukha Dukkadaha. So there he compares Sukha and Dukha as seasons. They are just phases. They will come and they will go. First Sukha will come, then Dukha will come. Then Sukha will come, and then Dukha will come. There will be phases where we will have both Sukha and Dukha simultaneously existing in our life. We might have certain kind of Dukha and certain kind of Sukha. Actually, that is what happens most of the times. We have both in our life. So they will exist, but how do we get out of them? Vita become free from Raga, Bhaya and Krodha. Raga is attachment, Bhaya is fear, and Krodha is anger. If you get free from this, then Sthitadhir Muni Ruchyate. You become a Sthitadhir Muni. But that is the whole idea. How do we get free from it? And Prabhupada writes that actually the only way to get free from this is Krishna consciousness. So only a Krishna conscious person can actually, a person basically who is somehow or the other attached to spiritual realization, basically transcendence. In the 6th chapter, 22nd verse, Yam labdva cha param labham manyate nathikam tataha. Yasmin satana dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate. Krishna says that, after attaining that transcendence, after attaining that yam labdva, he doesn't say transcendence, but it is kind of understood. So there he is talking more about Paramatma. When a yogi is fixed in Paramatma, when he is able to realize Paramatma within his heart, and he is actually able to see the Paramatma within his heart, yam labdva cha param labham manyate nadikam tataha. When he attains that particular state, he thinks that there is no greater gain to be achieved. That is one characteristic that Krishna says there in 22. The second characteristic he says, Yasmin sthitona dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate. After getting situated in that state, even if a misery as big as a great mountain, if that comes and he is not na vichalyate, he is not, he doesn't deviate, he is not disturbed, because he has attained that which is our natural state, which is something, that is the biggest achievement. That is something which is not material, and only spiritual realization can give us that. So I think we are running out of time now. I'll stop here and see if there are any final questions, comments, or corrections. Anyone would like to add anything? Okay. All right. If there are no more questions, comments, or corrections, we can stop here. Thank you for joining. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhyobhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti vaishnavrinda ki jai.
Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ganpati Govind Prabhu ki jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare